You don't want my cup in the way.
Hello everybody, we are live from BOMA. Welcome and thank you for joining today. My name is Stephanie Scibilia and I am the Director of Channel Partnerships for SafeTraces. And if you are unfamiliar with SafeTraces, we are a biotechnology company that has developed tagging technologies to track how aerosols move through your building and space and understand the impacts of HVAC systems and other solutions to remove them. The key components talking about safety, spend, and sustainability. So the data that is generated from our Veridart assessments is being used to guide HVAC system design, operation, and used as a verification tool for scenario testing, commissioning, and retro commissioning. So we help building owners and engineers reach HVAC optimization for reducing airborne disease spread and energy consumption. Our data is also being used to communicate to occupants that optimization has occurred through the use of our ventilation and filtration mark partnered with UL and powered by our SafeTraces technology. This mark is displayed in your entryways, verifies a building's HVAC system to remove 99% of aerosols within an hour, which links to about a 5 equivalent air change per hour rate. Our assessments are being used globally with clients such as the Irvine Company, Microsoft, Samsung, the State of California, New York, New Jersey, Port Authority, Atlanta Public School District, and through partnerships with ABM, UL, Johnson Controls, and Tetra Tech. So now that you know a little bit about us, we're excited to be exhibiting here at BOMA in Nashville, and even more excited to talk with one of my favorite clients and fellow New Jerseyans, Glenn Annecchino with Ivy Realty, to discuss the critical optimization of indoor air quality, get his opinion on some key initiatives to increase occupancy rates, and the importance of optimizing indoor air quality now and for the future of real estate management. But before we do that, let me introduce Glenn more formally. So Mr. Annecchino, he began his career with Ivy in 2007 and currently serves as the Vice President of Property Management. He is responsible for the daily operations of Ivy Realty properties in 8 states. This includes budgeting, tenant relations, capital improvements, preventative maintenance programs, contract maintenance, property transitions, dispositions, and oversight of property policies and procedures. And now I know why he never answers my phone calls.
Well said, Stephanie.
He has more important things to do besides talking to me, who's probably nagging him all the time.
And I'm hungry.
Yeah, that's right, he has to eat. He is a member of the New Jersey and Philadelphia chapters of BOMA and recently received a TOBY honors for Best Building of the Year and Best Corporate Facility. Congratulations on that. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thanks. Yeah, over my career, we were able to bring 2 buildings on to BOMA and win the TOBY Awards in the state of New Jersey. So
wow, that's awesome.
It was fun.
Yeah. All right. So if you don't mind, we're going to get into it. But before we do, just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you do have questions, feel free to put them in the comments section. We'll look to address them after the interview here, but would love your participation through the interview. So first off, I wanted to get your opinion. What challenges are building owners facing in today's market regarding tenancy?
The economic climate is one. And I'm not just speaking for myself or Ivy Realty. This is probably a very generic sense of what's going on in the marketplace and how things in the outlook really is. The economic climate, obviously, we're all struggling with that. Finding tenants and the struggles of maintaining tenants that are either not coming back to work, haven't come back to work, or are coming back to work and growing, and looking in the marketplace for space that may be more suitable for them.
Right.
Those are some challenges. Old and new inventory. We're a company that's buying and selling properties on a regular basis, so we buy a lot of old inventory and capitalize it and try to create it and recreate. It's challenging, especially now, but it's what we do and what we do best, customizing buildings and space for tenants with their specific need in mind. Commercialism, term we all kind of hear these days, just comes down to really how can we be financially stable and still perform and meet expectations on an income level. Those challenges are probably a forefront of everything that we have to do.
What are 3 ways, given these challenges, that building owners can help bring tenants back into the building or grow their tenancy, whether it's through square footage or their leasing contracts?
As a property manager, and again, I'm not going to speak to all property managers, we all have kind of our own way of doing things.
Yeah.
I have my own philosophy that I call the 3 S's.
Okay, we have a 3 S's too. Go ahead, let's hear yours.
Stewardship.
Okay.
Stewardship comes down to the management of your staff, your property, how you handle yourself, how do you communicate to your tenants, being transparent. Stewardship in the workplace is one of my beliefs, and I emphasize that with all my staff. Safety. We're required and want to be sure we're performing and meeting all the safety requirements and risk management levels that people need in the workplace, whether that's environmental or just physical. And security. It's keeping the workspace safe. And that's not just a physical aspect, but it's a technology aspect. Forefront is cybersecurity and making sure that we're maintaining and have those relationships in place. Assisting tenants when they need it, and certainly want them concentrating on the work at hand, yeah, and not worrying about what's going on around them, leaving that to us.
Yeah, that's a lot of components that you have to think about, right? And it's very challenging because everything's so fluid right now and ever changing, with not only now the pandemic, with the economics of increases in inflation. So there's certainly a lot to think about, a lot to consider, and understanding, how you can differentiate yourselves to keep those tenants in place, to make them feel comfortable, welcomed. I know when I was walking around your building, I felt very welcomed, and just from the receptionist to how people in the hallway are greeting you, but I think it's a type of culture you create in the building as well.
Very well, it is, and it is. It becomes a culture of sorts. So,
yeah.
Good point, and thank you.
You're welcome. Kind of along the lines of those, do you think building owners have to make new promises or offer new services related to indoor air quality given the pandemic? And if so, what are those comprised of?
It's an interesting question. You hear a lot of new terminology out there. The art of the possible. Amenity-rich environments. Well, health and safety.
Yeah.
These are all becoming forefront. We've always promoted and managed our properties using the BOMA standard. Mm-hmm. That's why we're here at BOMA today, to learn more, to understand more, and to execute on that. BOMA's been doing this for years, and we have been successful in following their program since I've been involved in BOMA 15 years ago. and all these nuances and things that come to us, we're kind of already have in place, in a sense of it's there already. The next step is trying to just reassure the tenant employee that things are what they are, and it's not smoke and mirrors, it's real, and proving it's real. And you know, certainly being open and transparent about how we operate. And having that standard in front of us is a surety of sorts to them that, you know, we're following a guideline that has been going on for years.
I think that's a key component is the communication aspect.
So I may not have answered your question directly, but as a building owner, we're providing assurances, and we believe that BOMA provides those assurances following their means and methods.
So I was watching an interview recently with Mark Dixon, who is the CEO of IWG, which is a shared workplace company. And I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts about this. He mentioned that the future of hybrid working will consist of corporations subscribing to shared workplaces compared to traditional tenancy at an office building for their workers. He argues that there's a need for convenience where employees can work from home but go into an office setting for meetings, conference calls, and then being able to access these types of environments as they're traveling nationwide. So do you think the future of hybrid workplace will follow this model? And if so, do you see traditionally leased office spaces converting to shared workplaces? And what does that mean for those building owners?
Interesting question, Stephanie. Took some thought on this because I was not familiar with Mr. Dixon, but I did go on and look him up a little bit and understand where he came from in Regis and the shared workplace, and we've had them as tenants in our properties. Nobody has a crystal ball here. We're not sure where the commercial marketplace is going to gravitate to. We do believe that demographic has a lot to do with that. The younger workplace is the future, and having that diverse, different model of commercial space is part of what we're going to have to work with in the future. It's inevitable, it's going to happen. It's not for everybody, but it is for some. And it will be a part of how we construct, how we renew our buildings for the future.
Definitely a consideration then, I'm hearing, for, you know, as you're buying and selling acquisition buildings on property use, right?
I mean, everybody out there is trying to hunt down tenants. We have tenants who are, I'm going to say, younger companies, and they are the ones coming to us looking for more space. They're exploding at the seams. They're looking for diverse properties in great locations that meet their expectations. And these are generally in the urban areas, just outside of major cities where it's easy to get to. A lot of amenities in place already, and it's commutable, but close to home. And close to home is going to be a big one coming because nobody wants to commute anymore.
Right. Especially now that they have the luxury of working from home and almost anywhere now with the internet going on. And, you know, kind of along the lines of that, so you're basically saying that you do think that there will be a combination of the traditionally used office spaces as well as those that may do better as a shared workplace environment. Am I
absolutely
correct on that?
Yep, absolutely. The traditional office space is never going to go away.
Okay, interesting. And another point is that these companies, these new startup companies, or the ones that are growing at a rapid rate, they want their employees to be working together or in a building at least portion of the time, right?
Absolutely. Communal environment, collaboration, this is huge. And in our properties we see this and have been able to get folks back to work to a point where, we have properties with pre-pandemic we're over 1,300 employees, and we're seeing 50% come back to work, and they're there every day, and they're working and collaborating, and they're getting their job done, and they're happy to be back.
Yeah, I think there's something to say, even in my experience in talking with clients, there is nothing better than an in-person interaction. And I think everybody's getting tired of the conference calls, whether it's through Zoom or Teams, to have that in-person experience, which there's nothing that really can rival that. And I feel like it's so powerful, not only when I'm talking to my clients, but again, for the collaboration experience of bouncing ideas back and forth, seeing how people are reacting, I think makes sense. And
maintaining of an environment of creativity so that the employee can input and share ideas.
Right.
It's very important.
So one of your clients recently performed our Veridart testing at your facilities using our aerosol assessments. Wanted to ask, why did your client decide to perform their assessments? What addresses were our assessments what answers were our assessments able to address? And then from there, on the post-assessment side, what value did the data have for your clients? And how does your client plan on using these assessments in the future?
So I found out about Veridart at a work session in BOMA, Boston, back in 2021. And I footnoted it on a scrap piece of paper that stuck it in my pocket because it interests me. And the work session was about, the office space during and after a pandemic.
Right.
And a lot of those topics are going around. So I took it and kind of put it in my back pocket, but to revisit. And we did. Yeah. Called you and said, we'd like to talk and understand a little more about what it is that you do, what you can provide. A building is a living and breathing thing in our eyes, okay? It always requires attention. You can't just shut it off. We wanted to prove to our client that this living, breathing thing was working the way it was supposed to. We can talk the talk. We can hire engineers at tremendous expense. We can pull out all the bells and whistles to make the environment what we think it already is.
Right.
But it's tough to prove sometimes in a scientific manner that provides data, that provides real-time data. And we were willing to investigate and look further into whether Veridart really was going to do what they say they were going to do.
Right.
With that said, the end of the day, after we did the performance testing, we do 2 variations to the performance testing, which I'm sure you're going to speak to. We came to the conclusion we already knew. My chief engineer going into this told the story to me. He's like, Glenn, we're doing this. What if it fails? What does that mean for us as a group? That we're not providing what we're supposed to be providing for our client. And with confidence, I told him, Ken, don't worry about it. You're doing a great job. I can tell you right now, we're going to be fine. And all this is going to do is solidify you and your team that you're doing a great job. So let's go for it. What do we got to lose, right?
Yeah.
We shared the data with our client. If it's great, if not, we learn something and fix it.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great point, and how our data is really being used. It's really used to guide decisions, right? You're understanding how your systems are being performed. You have the data to show that. And if it's not performing to the optimization of where you would like it to, you now understand, well, how and where do we need to fix this? And whether it's looking at understanding, the MERV level filters that you need or you're overcompensating for. A lot of people are upgrading to higher level MERVs because of recommendations from ASHRAE without understanding, is this necessary for our facility, and are the aerosols generated at room level even making it back to those air handling units? And then what is the impact of those? Also, increasing those MERV levels require an increased energy consumption because you have to force more air through those higher dense filters. So is that increase in MERV level absolutely necessary? And that's where our data comes in and helps evaluate that, showing that if you made those changes, do you want to stay there, or can you dial back, saving some energy cost and consumption and understanding where that optimization needs to be?
Yeah, and that's a great point is, everybody was so in tune to running systems 24/7, 100% outside air all the time. And what we learned was actually we were running fine. Actually, we lowered our static pressures as a result because the systems were running as efficient, if not too efficient,
right,
and saved energy as a result. So there's an ROI involved. So it showed us that it's not necessary as long as everything's working as it should. You're fine. But again, understanding in factual terms what it looks like means the world. Again, you're assuming certain things are working right. But when you have the factual knowledge and data to go behind that, there's no more worry.
And that's just it. It's, also every building is different, right? Every building is going to operate different. And so understanding that, yes, you now have confirmation that your systems are running appropriately, or where adjustments may need to change so that you can reach that optimization. And for companies that are really looking to lead with environmental and social governance goals, sustainability, looking at reaching net zero. Again, another way. How are you running your systems? How are you operating your systems? And what's the best way we can reduce infectious aerosol spread and optimize our energy consumption so we can help reach those goals as well? Are you seeing a lot of sustainability goals, ESG goals, from your clients be incorporated nationally?
Oh, absolutely. It's forefront right now. We're re-upping our lead O&Ms on properties. We are investigating and moving forward with well health and safety. They want to see this inputted and going on in their properties. The sustainable level is, like I said, a forefront. Do I have time for a quick story?
Sure.
We had to approach our client with this at a cost and sell them on the fact that we felt this was viable. And as I'm sitting in a conference room with them to talk about this next step, I faked a sneeze. And this is, coming right out of, Omicron variant, and everybody gave me a look. And I said, does anybody know where that sneeze went? And they all looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, exactly. I says, what we're here to show you is that the environment in a conference room specifically, because that was the panic, is getting into a meeting space again. What happens?
Right.
Where does that go?
Yep.
How does that get circulated? Who's affected?
Yep.
And they said, okay, let's see what this is all about.
Yep.
And that's how we started to move forward with the project. But
thank you for telling me that story. I am glad we have it recorded here because we're going to have to use that. That's awesome. I'm going to have to tell all my clients to start sneezing in their conference rooms there to get the point across. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Is before our technology just 1 second.
Pause.
Pay it forward, y'all. Community service event located at the end of the 500 aisle.
We are live.
Yes, we are live.
To help assemble needed goods. for the
Anything
branch
goes right now.
manager. Thank you.
But you know, that's the point. Before our technology, there's no other way to measure how aerosols impact a building, how they travel, and using that data in a way that can benefit the building owners, the engineers, the occupants. Right now we're being used in a lot of commissioning and retro commissioning projects where we are being inserted into that process, and that data is being used to help, again, with system design, knowledge of different performances of different types of HVAC systems. And once improvements have been made, especially as new tenants come in, or again during a retro commissioning process, we're then coming back in as part of that commissioning to verify, look, we've installed this equipment, it is running properly, we are getting the ventilation and filtration rate that's intended. And the testing and balancing firms are using that data as well to show, okay, look, our airflow is not quite where we need to make it. Now we know where to adjust because we have this data. And we're now finishing up with complete optimization of the building as it relates to airflow and aerosols. And so really it's a win-win-win for all parties involved. The building owners understand that their money for their capital improvements are being used wisely and effectively. The engineers are being able to deliver what they promised, same with the tab. And then you're understanding that you can communicate this data, this optimization, this effort to your occupants that these are the measures we've taken, this is the data that we now have, and through the UL ventilation filtration mark, a third party is verifying that your systems do in fact reach this optimization and this criteria. And that can be very powerful.
Facts are powerful. Scientific data is powerful. It's real.
Yeah.
And people look at that, whether they understand it or not. Sometimes, you know, like I can explain in layman's terms, a sneeze in a conference room, about how this all, you know, comes together, but it means something.
Yeah. So, is this type of approach that you would recommend for other building owners?
I think in certain situations, absolutely.
Where do you see it being most applicable?
I think in areas where you have more dense situations and population, you're promoting health and wellness and getting your people back into the office, that this truly allows you to, I lost my train of thought. Somebody just went by and, thanks, Ellen.
Glenn's very popular here. You're saying where you think that this would be best applicability for the types of buildings?
Yes. Would I necessarily utilize something like this in an industrial environment? Perhaps I would, but I think ASHRAE kind of covers that, and ventilation and OSHA all kind of cover that in a work environment, in a large warehouse or manufacturing facility. You know, they're already on top of those scenarios. In the office, nobody.
Enough, though, I will say, I'm gonna. You're
gonna
rebuke you here.
Okay,
a little bit.
Good. You should.
We've actually been working with some industrial manufacturing facilities, especially. We recently did a job for a wastewater treatment plant that was not necessarily concerned with aerosol as related to sickness, exposure, and airflow, but wanted to ensure that they're critical areas where they have aerosolized chemicals, understanding where is the airflow of those chemicals and are they reaching the vents that they intend them to, and what is that airflow pattern. So we were actually able to help confirm isolation of those aerosols getting up into those exhaust systems of which they were intended, so that they weren't spreading throughout the remaining parts of the warehouse and facility to expose other folks.
It's a great story.
Thank you.
See, it has many, many uses.
It does.
Yes, I would recommend it. Again, specific to what we do as a company, might be more limited than somebody else.
Yeah, sure. Understandably so. So for building owners who think that they'll just wait out the pandemic, which by now if they're still thinking that, I don't know what to say about that. It's still here. But for those that kind of a little bit more conservative and wanting to just, see how things pan out, do you have any advice for them and or recommendations on why you see the value of being proactive as it relates to indoor air quality?
The market's going to drive how we perform. We have few tenants in the market and too many brokers showing them options and space. I think what really comes down to is we want to be representable to the client, the tenant, the broker, that we are performing and are providing an environment that is safe, that is clean, and that is certainly meeting standards and or above standards. And again, I will put emphasis back on BOMA and how we manage that. And when we meet with clients and brokers and talk them to this point, they understand it.
Yeah.
So I think it provides just a comfort level that they're going to make a better choice knowing that I'm a proactive business owner following a standard that's already in place, but believe in that standard, and it's providing them with a clean, healthy, safe environment.
Yeah, I think just indoor air quality, the one good thing that the pandemic kind of brought out was the fact that this is an area that needs to be more paid attention to. And not realizing the impacts of an indoor environment on whether it's cognitivity or work productivity or health, physical health. So for, if you're not, as a building owner or manager, if you're not looking at how the health of your building, whether it's physically or within the building, looking at your air, it should be something that's on your docket to pencil in there, because it's not going away. People are paying a lot more attention to it.
Absolutely.
And the drivers are the occupants, right?
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, buildings are living, breathing things, whether you think it or not.
Right.
But the reality is it is.
Yeah.
And if you treat it as such, you're going to be fine.
Yep.
So building owners, yes, they need to be proactive. They need to be sure they're handling these things that way.
Mm-hmm. So this is our last question. Are you ready for it? We've been talking here for a while, and I appreciate your time, but I know I had asked you this question before when I first came to the facility before we started testing. But I'm still interested in your comments, and I wanted to share that with the audience here and everybody at BOMA. How do you think indoor air quality will play into building acquisitions and sales?
So speaking on behalf of Ivy Realty, as a company whose focus has always been acquisitions and dispositions, we perform due diligence to certain levels. We are focusing on changing how we perform that due diligence. We have been in situations where, due to a lack of detail and being more focused on the small things. We've lost value.
Yeah.
HVA systems, how they operate, how they were maintained, prior ownership's record keeping, really trying to dig into what was going on in that property before we go in and buy it.
Right.
And on the other hand, is providing the buyer, a new owner, with that material very openly and transparently. And every property we sell gets a binder, and in that binder is all the information about what we have done, how we have done it, what we've maintained, how it was maintained. And it creates just a comfort level for any owner or seller, buyer or seller, that creates value.
Yeah.
It's about creating value and maintaining value.
Yeah. I could just see this, being something that they're just going to want to know, and could be either a selling point or a buying point, that, hey, this building has reached this criteria, and here's the data to show that. If they're selling it, if they're buying it, can buyers demand that this is a criteria we want you to meet before we buy this building? Is that something that can be at play?
Absolutely. We have demands from buyers, and if it makes sense,
yeah.
Absolutely, we're going to do our best to try to satisfy their demands.
How do you think that separates you from the competition? Having a mark like the UL mark as part of your building, or the WELL Health and Safety or a LEED as part of your building, compared to maybe a competitor that doesn't necessarily have those certifications? And or again, how does that make the value of your buildings differ from those as well?
I think it goes back to just good stewardship.
Yeah.
The 3 S's, like I talked about. How the property's managed, and how you operate, and what standards you operate with. And again, I'm going to always emphasize BOMA, because the reality is it means something.
Right. I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. It has to have meaning, right?
Yeah.
Anything that you're doing has to have meaning. Well, I really appreciate the time, and for you taking the time to talk with us today. I really enjoyed it. It was great getting to ask you these questions and hear your insights. I really appreciate it. If anybody else has questions for Glenn, or for me, or if you're interested in learning more about our Veridart assessments or obtaining the UL ventilation infiltration mark or application, feel free to message me on LinkedIn, or you can email me, Stephanie@SafeTraces.com. Very simple. I also think my contact information is in my LinkedIn contact information. Very simple enough. And be sure to check out www.safetraces.com to learn more information as well. Do you have any final parting words before we?
No, thank you. Excuse me. It's been fun, and anybody here in Nashville, come to the convention. It's great. Nashville's great, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. I'm gonna this fell off just briefly here. Well, I appreciate it, Glenn. Everybody, have a great, wonderful day, and we're signing off live from BOMA, Nashville, Nash Vegas. Thank you so much. You know, like
pleasure.
the news shows?
What?
Like the news shows.